Welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we're going to explore the adventure capital of the world, Queenstown. We weren't exactly sure what we were expecting from this resort town, but we were genuinely pleasantly surprised. Stay tuned to find out what we loved, what it was that surprised us, and what we would do differently if we could do it all again. We stayed 3 nights in Queenstown, but we honestly could have stayed longer. Initially, I had hoped to do 5 nights, but when you've got 3 weeks to squeeze in as much as possible on just the South Island alone, something is going to have to take a hit, and unfortunately, that was Queenstown. Although we had an absolutely incredible 3-day itinerary, there were some activities that we just didn't get time to do that I'll cover a little bit later on in this video. We will 100% be making an effort to do them on our next visit to Queenstown. Queenstown itself reminded me of some of the mountain resorts that we've been to around the world, like Whistler in Canada. It definitely offered that party vibe that isn't necessarily our kind of thing, although it was quite cool to be able to go somewhere that had restaurants and bars that were open much later into the evening than in some of the other places around the South Island. So if you do like to party and if you like to eat late, maybe Queenstown is the place for you to visit. So moving on to some of the activities that we absolutely adored and would recommend you checking out too. First up is a road trip to Glenorchy. It's only about 50-minute drive up the road, but there are some absolutely breathtaking viewpoints to stop off at along the way, like Bennett's Bluff. There is also a walk at Mount Crichton. However, when we turned up, the car park was completely full, so we decided to move on and make our way to Glenorchy. When we got to Glenorchy, the views again were absolutely spectacular, especially around the wharf area, and of course we had some pictures and had to capture some footage from the famous red shed. We did get to Glenorchy quite late in the day, probably around about 3:30, 4 o'clock, so most of the cafes and local businesses had shut up for the day. So if it is somewhere that you'd like to spend a little bit more time exploring the local businesses, I'd recommend getting there earlier in the day. So next up is the Gondola and the Luge experience. If you know me, if you've watched any of my videos before, you know I love a good gondola, so I was never going to turn that opportunity down. However, we were a bit unsure of whether we were going to do the Luge. It seemed like a bit of a childish activity to do, but we'd seen good reviews and we thought, you know what, we've got some free time, let's just do it. I'm so pleased we did. I don't think you'll get better views on a luge anywhere in the world. But the actual activity itself, as soon as we started the first of 3 runs, I was giggling like a schoolchild. It is just such a happy activity to do. And if you're in Queenstown, and especially if you've never done a luge before, I really thoroughly recommend that you give it a go. The views from the top and the viewing area are absolutely incredible. They are doing quite a lot of renovation, or they were when we visited in October. Hopefully that means that views are going to be even better by the time you get there, but just expect a little bit of building work if you are going to the very, very top, but it certainly doesn't stop the experience from being absolutely incredible. And another activity that is a complete non-negotiable in my mind is hiring some e-bikes with around the basin. We got on a minibus in Queenstown and they shipped us and the e-bikes over to Arrowtown. They showed us how to use the e-bikes, set us up with our helmets, our safety gear, and then kind of sent us on our way to just explore, use the bikes for the entire day and do whatever we wanted to do. So we started off by exploring Arrowtown. Now I don't have any video footage from Arrowtown, but I do have a couple of pictures. And again, I love old signs, I love old places. So this old gold mining town definitely felt like a bit of me. We grabbed a coffee, we got on those e-bikes, and then we headed off with the Remarkables in the distance, kind of guiding us all the way back to Queenstown, and we just enjoyed all the cycle trails. And I've heard that a lot of New Zealand has immaculate cycle trails, so I can't wait to do more when we do go back. But I have to say, the experience, especially if you're from maybe some of the busier places in the UK, or if you're from some countries that doesn't have particularly accessible cycling or mountain biking, this was just brilliant because it was so well laid out. It was so easy to cycle. It was so much fun. I think we were about an hour, 2 hours into our cycle ride, and we were most of the way back to Queenstown. We bumped into this wonderful chap who, I guess he saw us. He saw we looked maybe a little bit confused. We explained the situation to him where we said, we don't want to waste a whole day. Like we've paid for a whole day on these bikes. Where can we go next? What trails should we do? And he pointed us in the direction of Hugo Tunnel. And he did say to us, it is quite narrow, it is quite steep, it's quite windy. So only go down there if you do feel quite comfortable on your bikes. But he said, if you get down there, the views, just the whole experience is incredible. And I'll pop a little bit of footage on here now. He wasn't wrong. Thank you to that guy. I know he's not going to be watching this video, but you really did make our day. You sent us in the right direction and we had the most incredible trip. So if you don't feel like going down to Hugo Tunnel and those really narrow trails, then there are so many other trails that you can do, and you can tie in a trip to Airburn as well. So that's got quite a lot of restaurants, kind of go out to the wine region. You can actually tie in a winery tour. So I recommend checking out around the basin, hiring some e-bikes and enjoying exploring the vicinity of Queenstown. Okay, so now to the important stuff. Fergburger. Is it worth it? And what about those queues? Well, we had hoped that we could call ahead. We'd had a really good tip. Call ahead, place an order over the phone, and then just go and collect your order. We tried that, but we got a voicemail saying they weren't accepting phone orders at the time. So we were like, okay, we'll go down anyway. We got down there and there was a pretty big queue, certainly not as big as I've seen on some socials and in some pictures. However, I thought, let's just get in the queue anyway. But here's the important thing. Once you've placed your order, head over to Perky's Floating Bar. It's about a 5-minute walk from Fergburger. And as long as you place an order for a drink there, you can take your food. It can be your own packed lunch. It can be from any of the other local takeout businesses. But it was great for Fergburger because it was really close. Once we got our drinks, we just kept an eye on the Ferg website. It would let us know what order was ready and give us a little bit of an indication of the waiting times as well. So as soon as I saw that our order was ready, I walked back, I grabbed the goods, brought them back over to Perky's Bar, and we were able to relax in relative peace. We weren't having to jostle for space with other Fergburger customers. We didn't have to shout at each other to have a conversation. And I really do thoroughly recommend heading over to Perky's if you are getting a takeout Fergburger. In terms of the Fergburger itself, I liked it. I wouldn't go as far as saying it was the best burger in the world. My other half, he did really like it. He finished mine because it was huge. So yeah, it was a good burger. I would say it probably is worth the wait, especially if you're going to Perky's as well. Definitely try calling ahead because that is the best of both worlds. If you're able to make an order over the phone, go in and pick up your Fergburger order and then take that to Perky's Floating Bar. That is honestly the ideal solution to that Ferg queue. Now to the bits we didn't get time to do. And these make me really sad because I did really want to give all of them a go, but I think we were halfway through the trip and we were quite knackered. So that explains why 2 of them didn't happen. The first one though was Deer Park Heights. Deer Park Heights is meant to be a place where you can see incredible views of Queenstown. And I really did want to do it, but the problem is I wanted to try and see what the weather was like. I wanted to see what the visibility was like because I didn't want to pay to go somewhere and then not be able to see these incredible views of Queenstown. So I left it, I didn't book it in advance. And then by the time I remembered, they were fully booked. So yeah, absolutely gutted. I think there are generally positive reviews on it. I think prices have gone up in recent years, which is absolutely understandable with the maintenance of the property and everything. It is on private land, but I 100% will be doing it when we go back to Queenstown next time. Another activity that I was hoping that we could do, but I realised before we went out to New Zealand it wasn't going to be possible, was a sunrise hike up Roy's Peak. Now, the reason why we couldn't do it is because we went in October and it was in the middle of lambing season. So absolutely, completely understandable. The track was closed. You're not visiting in lambing season. I've seen so many incredible reviews of doing a sunrise hike there. You do have to leave quite early. It is quite a tough hike from what I can see, but the views at the top are meant to be absolutely incredible. And I think it is quite busy in the mornings as well. So if you are going up for sunrise, expect there to be more crowds than if you were maybe going up a little bit later in the day. And leading on from that, because I knew we couldn't do Roy's Peak, I thought let's do Queenstown Hill instead. And our hotel where we were staying was probably only about a 5-10 minute walk from the start of the Queenstown Hill trail. But we were so tired, we were exhausted that we ended up just prioritising our sleep. There were quite a few other activities that I had on my shortlist, and we would have done them if we had more time. One of those is the TSS Earnslaw, beautiful steamboat on Lake Wakatipu, and I thought a cruise would be a perfect opportunity to just sit back, relax and enjoy the scenery. We didn't have much time to sit back and relax, so we didn't actually do that. We did go and see it, and it looked beautiful, but yeah, we didn't get on board, unfortunately. And again, that is something else that I would like to do next time. They do tours over to Walter Peak Farm. So that is potentially something that we would do next time. So you tie in a cruise on the TSS Earnslaw and also a trip to Walter Peak Farm, which that may be your cup of tea. So you may want to prioritise that for your visit. Another activity that I did briefly mention earlier when I was talking about the e-bikes is a visit over to Airburn, which is kind of described as a hospitality playground. So it has plenty of places to taste wine and some absolutely beautiful food options as well. We didn't have time to visit, which is a shame because I definitely shortlisted a couple of the restaurants. I would be really interested if you have been to Airburn and you're watching this video, which of the restaurants you'd recommend, because we will be going back to Queenstown again and I will probably only have time to visit one of those restaurants. So let me know your favourite place at Airburn. We stayed in a lovely place called the Stay of Queenstown. The place was absolutely immaculate. It had some incredible views over the mountains, and it also just the little touches like having some welcome cakes, and all the breakfast we needed was, yeah, absolutely perfect. Well done to Stay of Queenstown. We stayed in the Rakiura Lodge, and that was, again, that was all we needed. It was perfect. And there was free parking as well. So in Queenstown, it is fairly difficult to find some free parking. So it was worth it for the parking alone. But it was probably about a 15 to 20 minute walk into Queenstown Centre. So my overall thoughts on Queenstown, it is definitely a fun place to visit, and if you can, give it 5 nights, but not necessarily at the cost of staying in other locations. But if you wanted to visit places like Doubtful Sound and Milford Sound, I would still thoroughly recommend staying a night or two in Te Anau. It just makes those travel days a lot shorter, and Te Anau itself is absolutely incredible. If you haven't seen my previous video on Milford Sound, I will link it up in the corner. It does touch on what there is to do in Te Anau as well. Next time we go back to Queenstown, we are hoping to actually catch the tail end of the winter season. So we'd like to visit places like Cardrona and maybe Treblecone. Again, if you have any recommendations for which resort to visit, please let us know. Knowing it's the tail end of winter, we may not necessarily be able to do the e-bikes again, but that will give us plenty of opportunity to do some of the other activities that we did miss out on this time. I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it, and certainly as much as I enjoyed visiting Queenstown. Please make sure that you hit like and subscribe. It really does help the channel, and it'll also mean you don't miss out on the next episode where I take a trip up to Wanaka. I do a little solo hike, and then I go over to the West Coast where the weather was absolutely wild, and we stayed in some really unique accommodation that will just stick with me forever. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.